Through its campaign of terror, ISIL perpetrated some of the gravest crimes in recent history. Through destruction, killings, abductions, rapes, slavery, and the targeting of those most vulnerable, ISIL inflicted unimaginable suffering on the people of Iraq. In response, the international community and the government of Iraq spoke with one voice in establishing UNITAD, the investigative team to promote accountability for crimes committed by Daesh. To collect, preserve, and store evidence of ISIL crimes committed in Iraq, and to ultimately hold those responsible to account. UNITAD began its work in Iraq in 2018 and established operational offices in Baghdad and later in Dohuk and Erbil, where 6 dedicated field investigation units and 2 thematic units investigate crimes committed by ISIL against the different communities in Iraq.
One of UNITAD's dedicated field units has been investigating the 2014 mass killings of up to 1,000 Shia men who were housed at the Badush prison complex. This massacre is one of the largest mass executions of civilians ever committed by ISIL in a single incident. UNITAD's investigations into the Badush prison massacre led to establishing a comprehensive record of ISIL's attacks and the related crimes. These investigations depended on evidence collected by our teams and provided by the Iraqi judiciary, on witness statements from survivors as well as forensic evidence, the available videos, and reconstruction of crime scenes. This video will help to describe what exactly happened during the attacks on Badush prison and will assist experts in drawing a clearer picture of the crime scene. Our team's investigations do not treat massacres such as this horrific one as isolated incidents. They are analyzed within the greater scope of ISIL international crimes against all Iraqi communities. This massacre is investigated within the context of other crimes committed by ISIL against the Shia community, such as atrocities against the Tikrit Air Academy personnel, known as Camp Speicher, as well as crimes in and around Mosul and others.
In the first half of 2014, ISIL began its campaign of terror, committing international crimes across Syria and Iraq. ISIL consolidated power and control of the region as they defeated opposing militant groups and forced local Sunni tribes and militias to pledge loyalty and join its ranks. A major turning point occurred on June 10, 2014, when ISIL terrorists and aligned groups fighting under ISIL's banner officially took control of Mosul, Iraq's second-largest city and home to millions of residents. ISIL's occupation of Mosul set off a humanitarian crisis throughout the region that would last for years. While controlling approximately a third of Iraq and Syria, ISIL murdered thousands of Shia, Yazidis, and members of many ethnic and religious minorities. On the first day of the occupation, ISIL killed hundreds of predominantly Shia men who were prisoners at the Badush prison complex, located approximately 10 kilometers west of Mosul city's outskirts. Today, just south of the village of Badush, satellite imagery shows the traces of a complex that is no longer there. But in 2014, these lines in the sand were the outlines of one of the largest detention complexes in the country, Badush Prison. Working with C2 Research, we reconstructed an approximation of the prison. In June 2014, the prison held approximately 3,000 prisoners, almost evenly divided between Sunni and Shia, with a small number of prisoners from other ethnic minorities. In the early morning hours of June 10th, as ISIL attacked the areas around Badush prison, the prisoners discovered that the guards and prison staff had escaped from the prison grounds and surrounding area, and that Mosul city had fallen to ISIL.
Around 10:30 p.m. on 9 June 2014, the guards must have abandoned the prison, leaving us prisoners locked up inside. We phoned them on their personal mobile numbers around 11 p.m. and told them that we had been shouting for them with no response. They said that they had run away.
Panic and chaos spread throughout the prison, and the prisoners began breaking out of their detention rooms.
Around 5 a.m., we broke the long iron legs of the metal double bunk beds and used them to pry open the metal bars of our cell, as we were unable to break the locks.
Hundreds of prisoners, both Sunni and Shia, escaped through the main front gate, while some jumped over the walls and exit gate at the rear of the complex. Some prisoners were scared and remained inside. That morning, during these escapes, ISIL fighters took over the prison. In 2021, an Iraqi television journalist interviewed a convicted ISIL terrorist who took part in the June 10th attack.
عددنا كان 20 واحد.
نعم.
والياتنا بكمات.
انتم المجموعه الوحيده لو اكو مجموعات اخرى شاركت بهاي؟
لا، مجموعات اخرى يم البوابه كانوا.
نعم.
احنا 20 واحد حاليا دخلنا السجن. سيطرنا على السجن بالكامل وفتحنا القاعات وطلعنا المساجين. من طلعناهم وقفنا على الشارع وقمنا نعزل.
They told us that we should not be afraid and that they would liberate us and bring us to our people, and they were chanting that the Islamic State would remain.
While ISIL told the prisoners that they were freed, they led them out of the main prison gate and onto the backs of large trucks on the Mosul-Damascus highway. They promised to take them to Mosul, where they could find transportation to their hometowns. This witness was among the prisoners that day.
صفطونا يعني قعدونا على الشارع لما يلزمونا السيارات. احنا صفطونا قالوا راح نوقف تريلات تصعدون تريلات نوصلكم للموصل، خارج الموصل كل واحد على اهله، يعني دا يقنعونا ويرمون طلقات ناريه يعني فوقنا، يعني يخوفونا بس فقط.
According to survivors, upwards of 1,000 prisoners were forced at gunpoint by ISIL onto trucks.
We were forced to get into those trucks under gun threats. 4 gunmen boarded each truck. They were telling us that the Islamic State had liberated us and that they would send us back to our people.
However, before the convoy reached Mosul, a couple of kilometers away from the prison, the trucks diverted off the highway and into the desert.
دواعش واقفين كانوا ناس سياراتهم. احنا قعدنا مربع. كلنا يعني الشيعة والسنة الشلعة كردي تركماني كلهم قعدنا نسويها.
ISIL fighters unloaded the prisoners onto the desert ground and separated the Shia from the Sunni.
احنا قعدنا والسنة تحول غادي. هذا المكان. جابوا التريلا وقفها غادي. كان البودي ماله برتقالي كان. قال شكو السني خليه يصعد.
The Sunni prisoners were loaded back onto the trucks and left towards Mosul, while some of them joined ISIL's ranks right there and then.
They actually gave Kalashnikov rifles to all 12 Sunni prisoners who joined them. These 12 then pointed out Shia prisoners who were pretending to be Sunni and moved them back to the Shia group.
After that, the gunmen dealt with us differently. They began to insult and slander us with racist and sectarian overtones, such as telling us that we are sons of fornication and rejectors, who curse the companion of Prophet Muhammad and the rightly guided caliphs.
Haji called me a Rafidi dog and asked me how I could possibly ask him to give me something to drink if I am as such. I replied that if he was a true Muslim, he would know that Islamic Sharia stated that even the animals must be given something to drink before they were slaughtered. Haji responded that the animals were more sacred than the Shia.
لا احنا من عزونا سنة وشيعة عرفنا راح يقتلونا.
This dry water canal runs through the desert, about 100 meters from where the captives were being held. Data captured by UNITAD was used to reconstruct the topography. According to survivors' testimonies, ISIL fighters lined up the Shia captives, well over 500 men, along its edge and started shooting them in the back en masse.
انا ويا ما الشمالة جتي هنا أنا طلقة براسي وبعدين ويا ما نمت جت طلقة بداية هنا انا حسيت انا روحي فقدتها بالخمس دقائق وفقدت.
بس رمى طلقات انا سويت دعبلت مكان جوا وادي دعبلت صرت بالاخير كلش اخير الوادي فنمت على ظهري على وجهي نمت ظليت نايم على وجهي قام يرمون انا سويت وروح ميت نايم ما اتحرك.
As the second round of executions continued inside of the dry water canal of those who were still moving, some of the Shia prisoners pretended they were dead and were protected by the corpses of victims who fell on top of them.
اكو واحد كان يمي رجال كبير من ضربوه براسه منه طبت منه طلعت وقع عليه.
The shooting continued until all the prisoners fell to the ground. After that, the gunmen shot individually at the remaining prisoners who were alive. This took about an hour and a half. After that, the area was set on fire. Some prisoners were burned and the others were injured.
رجعت مجموعة ثانية من هذول اللي نازلين بالوادي يتأكدون تأكيد تام بأن كلها انتهى أمرها. قاموا يحرقون بالجثث اللي هي الخشبة اللي وصفت لك اياها. فهم لما وصل يمي جعلوا الشعلة مال النار بقدمي اليمنى. بقت النار مشتعلة بقدمي أنا بقيت أتحمل ألمها ووجعها بحيث حتى ما يعرف بأن أنا بيه نفس. فمن شافني هيجي عبرني قال له هذا منتهي أمره مقتول وروح على اللي بصفه اللي بصفي.
يا بس كان عمق بي هسه تارسيه تراب ما تراب انا هذا الموقع مالي كان ماكو جثث قليل يعني اذا اكو قليل يطلع منه بس اكثر شيء منه تقريبا لي ذاك اللوفه كله جثث.
In the hours after the executions, some of the survivors escaped and lived to tell their story, while others died on the way due to their severe injuries, and yet others were caught and killed by ISIL, who controlled the area. Satellite imagery from September 2014 shows evidence of earth-moving equipment having covered up this mass grave with sand. Hundreds of these victims' bodies remained there in decay for years as ISIL controlled this region of Iraq until the liberation in 2017. UNITAD's investigative findings revealed that in the first 48 hours after taking over Badush prison, ISIL executed more than 600 Shia prisoners. Over 500 Shia prisoners were confirmed to have survived, most of whom had escaped before ISIL took over the prison. Over 300 Shia prisoners are still unaccounted for and are believed to have been killed by ISIL in the first 48 hours after the attack on Badush prison.
Our forensic experts and investigators have been working hand in hand with Iraqi national specialists to ensure the support for the exhumation of mass graves related to the Badush prison massacre. The collection and analysis of crucial forensic evidence and DNA-based identification of exhumed remains of the victims are key to facilitate their return to their families for dignified burial. The team's partnership with the national specialists from the Mass Graves Directorate and the Medical Legal Directorate, who have been leading exhumation and DNA-based identification efforts with the support of our experts, is instrumental to UNITAD's work.
As a result of DNA samples identification between the exhumed human remains and family members of the missing Shia prisoners, human remains of 78 Shia victims were returned to their families in a May 16, 2023 commemoration event in Baghdad.